the nights in neon cities are never calm. In 2077, this city is like a roaring giant, with countless light lines intersecting the high-rise buildings, reflecting the dirt and expectation in the laneways at the bottom. Chen Hao's office was on the 7th floor of a broken building in the old town. Outside the window was a neon sign that never went out. The red and blue light casts spots on his desk through the windows of the leaf. It's another day that I have no business. Chen Hao leaned on the broken chair, holding a cheap electronic smoke in his mouth, and the smoke scattered in the air. He glanced at the old-fashioned display on the table, with a bunch of unpaid notices dancing on the screen, and the red overdue tag was so dazzling that people wanted to smash this broken thing. His fingers knocked on the table inadvertently, and another thing was rumbling in his brain: his sister who had been missing for 3 years, Chen Hao. Ding! A sharp voice of notification interrupted his thoughts. Chen Hao looked down and saw an encrypted message popping up on the screen. He sat upright, clicked the message, and read in a low voice: "Trust, investigate Lin Zai's death. Remuneration, 500,000 credit points. Detailed discussion. 50,000. Chen Hao raised his eyebrows and sneered at the corner of his mouth. This price is enough for me to pay for half a year. He quickly returned to the other party and agreed to meet at the dark light bar in the old town area tonight. He just told him that this single business was not simple, but now, he has no choice. The dark bar is hidden in an inconspicuous alley in the old city. The neon light pipe at the entrance is half damaged, and it keeps opening. Chen Hao pushed in, and the heavy smell of smoke and the breath of cheap alcohol came over. He glanced around him. There were 2 people in the bar, including soldiers wearing enhancing eyes, and black helping gangsters full of tattoos. He walked straight to the bar and said to the restaurant in a low voice, "Look for someone called Shadow Dot." The cockerel raised his eyes and looked at him, pointing to a figure with a hooded hood in the corner. Chen Hao pointed his head, walked over, and sat down opposite the man. "Are you Chen Hao?" A low voice came from the hood, and the other party was cold, as if he deliberately lowered the volume. "Yes." "Tell me, what's worth 500,000? Chen Hao leaned against the back of the chair, crossed his hands in front of his chest, staring at the other party with a sharp look. The hooded man was silent for a moment and pushed over a miniature data disk. Lin Zai, an executive of Star Technology, was found dead in his apartment 3 days ago. The official said he was killed, but I know it was not. His consciousness was uploaded to the digital soul-destroying place, with the truth hidden inside. I want you to dive in and find out how he died. Digital spirit deadly?" Chen Hao raised his eyebrows, took the data plate, and knocked his fingers on it for a few seconds. The land is one of the darkest corners of the city, a virtual space uploaded by the dead, and enterprises use it to sustain their lives, in fact, to extract the final data value. Ordinary people cannot enter, and they dare not enter. But he is different. He has a decoder in his hand, a rare piece of equipment that can crack ground firewalls. "Why are you looking for me?" Chen Hao asked, with a test in his language. "Because you have that thing." The hooded man smiled and said, "Don't install it, Chen Hao. Your decoder has been released in the underground market. I need you to go into the ground, dig out Lin Zai's memory clips, and give me a certificate." Chen Hao narrowed his eyes and did not answer. His brain was flying quickly. 500,000 is not a small number, but the risk of intrusion is extremely high, especially for a giant enterprise like Star Technology. The security system behind it can make people die even if they die. But he thought of his sister, and those countless insomnia nights. Maybe this single business could give him some traces. Trade. Chen Hao finally opened his mouth, his voice low, "But I will collect half of the deposit first." The hooded man clicked his head, slipped an anonymous credit card from the cuff, and pushed it to Chen Hao. 25,000, the remaining delivery will be given to you. Chen Hao accepted the card, stood up, walked over and said, "Waiting for news within 3 days." Back at the office, Chen Hao contacted Yue Ying in the first time. His old friend, a technology-ridden hacker, doesn't have a firewall that she can't crack. The communication device was turned on, and an image of a girl wearing a VR lens popped up on the screen, her hair dyed into green and her mouth was chewing gum. "Brother Hao, is there another job?" Yuang knocked on the virtual keyboard and asked the other side. "The executive of Xingchen Technology, Lin Zhe, is dead. I want to check his memory in a slight manner. You help me get the company's firewall." Chen Hao said in a simplicity, inserted the data into the equipment, and shared the data. Yuang whistled. "Star Technology? Brother Hao, you're so frustrated. Their security system can burn your brain into scum." "But..." She grinned and showed her 2 tiger teeth. "Who made me the best tool for you? I'll open the back door for you in 12 hours. Thank you." Chen Hao's mouth slided slightly, and he immediately turned off the communication. He took out a black box from the drawer and lay his digital soul decoder, a chip that is the size of a thumb, with a complex symbol engraved on the surface. This thing was created from the black market 3 years ago. It is said to be the core technology of a closed laboratory, which can directly access the ground virtual space and crack the consciousness data. He inserted the decoder into the implant port on the back, closed his eyes, and his mind was instantly pulled into darkness. The next second, the darkness in front of him was replaced by an innumerable stream of data, and he sees a city composed of light, a digital soul land. There are countless pieces of consciousness flying here, like ghosts. "Lin Zhe, where are you?" Chen Hao said in a low voice. His ideology-touching hand reached towards the data stream, and began to search for the target. The power of the decoders spread out in his brain, like an invisible net, quickly locking an abnormally undulating data area. Finished. He felt nervous and his mind penetrated into that area. As the scene before his eyes changed, he stood in a broken virtual space, surrounded by memory clips of Lin Zhe, which continued to play like an old-fashioned movie. He saw Lin Zhe quarrel with a group of people in white coats in the experiment room of Star Technology, and heard words such as experiment, ideological control, and destructive core. Suddenly, a clip flashes through in Lin Zhe's perspective. A man wearing a mask lifts up his weapon and matches his head. "It's not killing yourself, it's killing." Chen Hao's pupils shrank, and he recorded every frame of his brain. He tried to extract more data, but the grounded security system suddenly started, and countless red police officers screamed in his mind. "Die it!" Chen Hao gritted his teeth, quickly opened the connection, and his consciousness returned to reality. He gasped, his head full of cold sweat, but a cheerful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Star Technology, you hide it deeply." At this moment, he knew that he had encountered a huge secret. Lin Zhe's death was not an accident, but a traitor of the enterprise. The ability of the decoders made him feel the pleasure of controlling data for the first time. This is his golden finger, his trump card for survival in this city. However, the trouble came faster than he expected. After walking out of the office for a few steps, the air in the alley became suppressed. Chen Hao stopped and looked around, and he noticed that someone was following him. He lowered his head and took a little smoke, and glanced at a tall figure walking out of the corner of the alley. "Chen Hao, right?" The man's voice was cold, and he was rumbling in the alley with his mechanical limbs. He took off his hood and exposed a face full of scars, with blue light unique to his eyes and his eyes. "I am Kaiwan, from Star Technology. Some people don't want you to be careless." "Oh? Then what are you going to do?" Chen Hao's mouth was relaxed and his hands quietly touched the gun around his waist. He knows that this kind of corporate thug will not tell you the truth. Kaiwan sneered, raised his right hand. Yi's limbs and arms instantly changed, and a sharp vibrating knife stretched out. "Take the things in your brain, or take them myself." "Try it." Chen Hao pulled his gun suddenly and shot straight into Kai's bra with an electric arc. But the other party reacted very quickly. On one side, the vibrating knife directly slashed the arc and rushed towards Chen Hao. The alley was narrow, so Chen Hao could only retreat and hide, and was hit by the blade several times. He glanced at the garbage dump at the end of the alley, his brain turned around, and suddenly rushed over, grabbed a broken iron plate and slapped it in front of him. "Gio!" The vibrating knife slashed on the iron plate, sparking 4 times. Chen Hao took the opportunity to kick Kaiwan in the knee, causing the other party to suffer, and his body was in a state of stagnation. Without hesitation, he turned around and ran away. At the same time, he activated the codec, taped a map of the old city in the Sea of Brain, and quickly found an escape route. "Don't want to run?" Kaiwan roared, and his limbs and arms were low, and his speed increased sharply. Chen Hao gritted his teeth, rushed into a narrower alley, passed through several trash cans, and finally left the other party behind. He gasped in his wall, and his mind was filled with Yuang's voice. "Brother Hao, I've hacked the company's internal network. Lin Zai's file is a bit interesting. During his lifetime, he was responsible for a project called Spiritual Chain, involving conscious control technology. And..." Yuang paused for a moment, and her language became solemn. "I found that there was an agent in his experiment list called Xiao, which coincided with the time when your sister missed 3 years ago." "Xiao?" Chen Hao's heart was shocked, his fists were clenched, and anger ignited in his eyes. "Yuang, keep checking. I want to know everything." The alley was as bright as the neon lights reflected on his face, and Chen Hao murmured in a low voice, "Xingqian technology, no matter what you hide, I will dig it out. Soon, wait for me." Chen Hao leaned against the corner of the old warehouse wall in the old city, and the night wind poured in from the top of the old iron leather roof, bringing a biting mood. He gasped, and the decoder port on the back was still left with the high-frequency stimulation that had just dived into the ground, and there seemed to be countless thorns in his brain. But compared to the fatigue on his body, the news that Yuang just came to him made him feel more distracted. "Xiao, the roster number matched the time when his sister lost. This is no coincidence, it is absolutely not." He took out the communication device, and Yuang's green light on the screen looked like a flash, and there was a habitual hymn in her language, "Brother Hao, don't be stunned. I have opened the inner door of Xingqian Technology's internal network, but their firewalls are upgraded faster than I expected. I can't last long, you have to tighten it." "How long?" Chen Hao's voice was low, and his fingers quickly tapped the communication device, tuning out the data map shared by Yuang. "At most 6 hours. After 6 hours, their AI will automatically repair loopholes. Don't talk to me, even top-level hackers can't get in." Yuang's voice chewing gum came through the communication device, and then added, "Also, Brother Hao, I found some Lin Zai's file fragments on the internet and mentioned a project called Spiritual Chain. When you dive into the ground, it's best to lock this keyword, saying that you might be able to dig out big things." Spiritual Chain link. Chen Hao murmured, and a memory clip that he had just seen was appearing in the brain, the consciousness control mentioned by Lin Zai during a quarrel with the white coats. The two words connected together, making his back squint. What is Xingqian Technology engaging in? What did they think of the slaughter as? A practical experiment where the deceased's consciousness is imprisoned? "Yuang, help me monitor the tracking signal of the Enterprise. I will go into the ground again and get it done in 6 hours." After Chen Hao finished speaking, he turned off the communication device, took out a stool-type energy bar from his backpack, tore the packaging and took a hard bite. The sweet smell makes him snail his eyebrows, but at least it can replenish some energy. He knew that diving in was not a joke, and every time he entered and exited, it was like dancing on the tip of a knife. If he was not careful, his mind might be trapped in it forever, turning into a pile of unintentional streams of data. He sat down against the wall, reconnected the decoder to the rear port, closed his eyes, and his mind was once again pulled into the virtual world composed of light and data. The scene of the digital soul dying is as strange as ever, with countless pieces of consciousness flying like ghosts, and their low voices lingering around their ears, making people's skin numb. Chen Hao calmed down and reached out to the previously locked data area, Lin Zai's memory film. "The soul locks the link, give me a thread," he said in a low voice, and the power of the decoder spread out in the sea of brain, like an invisible net, quickly filtering a massive stream of data. Soon, he locked a region of abnormal fluctuations, and his consciousness penetrated. As the scene in front of him changed, he stood in a broken experimental scene, surrounded by virtual equipment and data screens, with rows of codes and charts dancing on the screen. Is this Lin Zai's memory? Chen Hao's eyebrows approached a screen. Under his consciousness, a recording appeared on the screen. In the picture, Lin Zhe stood in front of a group of researchers and was excited. The Spirit Chain project is too dangerous. We cannot upload the living consciousness to the ground. This is contrary to human nature. Once it is out of control, what will these consciousnesses become? Monsters? Or slaves of the Enterprise? As soon as the picture was turned, a masked man spoke coldly. Dr. Lin, you are too naive. What the business wants is results, not morality. These ideas are perfect experiments that can test the latest control technology for us. As long as you succeed, Star Technology will dominate the entire Neon City. Chen Hao's heart was shocked and his fists were clenched. Sure enough, Star Technology is using illegal experiments to conduct illegal experiments. Not only do they imprison the deceased's consciousness, but even the living people have not let it go. He continued to flip through the memory clips and tried to find more evidence in the picture, but suddenly, the virtual space began to shake violently, and the data around him were like a disturbed lake water, rushing wildly. Warning! Warning! Unauthorized access was detected. A cold mechanical sound rose in the sea of brain. Chen Hao's pupils shrank, and his consciousness quickly retreated. But it was too late, and a huge data vortex suddenly appeared in the virtual space, and countless red lights shot out from it, squeezing towards him like a touch. It's a protection program. Chen Hao gritted his teeth, his consciousness condensed into a virtual long knife. This is another function of the decoder, which can transform his will into a weapon. He slammed a few red light lines by his knife, but more touches came from all directions, making people dizzy. A light line brushed through his consciousness, and the dramatic pain spread throughout his body like current, causing him to almost open the connection. But he knew that once it was closed, the memory data might be completely destroyed by the protection procedures, and he could not give up. He bit his teeth tightly, and the long sword burst out with a dazzling light, slashing the center of the vortex. Break it for me! Chen Hao roared, his mind rushing into the depths of the vortex, and finally touching a core data. He quickly extracted a series of pictures flashed through the brain. Countless conscious minds were locked in virtual prisons, and were pricked in pain. In the experiment room, researchers recorded data indifferently. Even when Lin Zhe was forced to upload his conscious mind, his roar was heard in Chen Hao's ears. You will pay the price. The moment the data extraction is completed, the protection program's attack reaches the top, and countless red touches encircle Chen Hao's consciousness group. He felt that his spirit was being suppressed to an extreme limit and was almost about to collapse. At this moment, Yuang's voice suddenly echoed in the brain. Brother Hao, I'm connected. Open an escape passage for you and evacuate. Chen Hao had no time to think about it, and quickly retreated along the data channel opened by Yuang, and his mind finally left the ground and returned to reality. He suddenly opened his eyes, gasping for breath, and the decoder port on the back seemed to be burning. He leaned against the wall, wiped the cold sweat from his head, and said in a low voice, "This broken place will kill people long ago." But he quickly cheered up, adjusted the data he had just extracted, and checked it carefully. The data not only proved the illegal experiment of Star Technology, but also mentioned a key agent, Xiao. The file shows that Xiao is one of the early experiments of the Spirit Chain project. It was successfully uploaded 3 years ago and is still trapped in a deep-level area in the land. Chen Hao's hand trembled slightly, and a desperate light ignited in his eyes. His sister was indeed captured by Xingchen Technology and became their experience. At this moment, the anger in his heart was almost burning everything. He knew that no matter what he faced, he would find Xiao and rescue her from that dam. Yuang, back up the data, and then help me locate the deep area of the ground. I want to go in and find the Xiao. Chen Hao's voice was as cold as ice, and it was unquestionable. Brother Hao, are you crazy? The deep-level area is the core of the ground, and the protection procedures are only 10 times stronger than that. Moreover, companies have begun to track your signals, and they will not let you continue to check it alive. Yuang was anxious and tried to block the picture. I don't have to choose. Chen Hao gritted his teeth. It's there, I can't give up. Yueying was silent for a moment, and finally sighed, "Okay, I'll help you. But you have to solve the trouble before you first. The thugs in the Enterprise have locked your position, and the guy named Kaiwan is headed. They are heading towards you, probably within 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Chen Hao sneered, stood up, and checked the electric guns and several self-made electromagnetic bullets on his waist. This warehouse is where he hides at the moment, and is surrounded by abandoned mechanical parts and broken tanks, which can be used to fight against wars in the environment. Come on, Kevin. Let's see who falls down first. He spoke in a low voice, quickly hid behind a pile of containers, and intentionally connected to the decoders, and began to interfere with the electronic signals around him, creating fake targets. In less than 10 minutes, heavy footsteps came from the outside of the warehouse, followed by the sound of metal collision. Kaiwan's voice was cold and cold. "Chen Hao, I know you are in it. If you hand over the data, I can make you die happily." "Happy? Sorry, I don't plan to die yet." Chen Hao responded in a low voice, and the sound deliberately sent out from the other side of the container, causing the other party to be distracted. Sure enough, the team led by Kaiwan began to search in a scattered manner, and several well-equipped thugs held the stairs and shot every corner of the warehouse. Chen Hao held his breath, moved quietly to a high-level container, and looked down below. He noticed that some kind of scanner was installed on Kevin's limbs and arms, and the blue light kept sweeping around, obviously locating his signal. He squirted at the corner of his mouth, activated the decoder, spreading a bunch of fake signals to the warehouse, instantly interfering with Kaiwan's scan. "Don't die, the signal is malfunctioning." A thug lowered his sword and turned to the wrong direction. Chen Hao seized the opportunity and threw out an electromagnetic bullet. With a low sound, the waves spread out. Several thugs' eyes and mechanical limbs instantly lost their spirits, and their movements became dull. "It's up!" Kaiwan roared, and reacted quickly, raised the vibrating knife and rushed towards Chen Hao's hiding place. But Chen Hao was ready to go over and jump out of the container, kicked over a bunch of waste irons with one foot, creating noise to attract attention, and then quickly hit it to the other side. Bang! Bang! The shooting sound of the stepping gun reverberated in the warehouse. Zifu flew over Chen Hao's side, sparking 4 times. He gritted his teeth, pulled out the gun and hit a thug. An electric arc hit the chest of a thug, and the other party fell to the ground with a cry. But Kaiwan was too fast, and the vibrating knife almost stuck under Chen Hao's back, forcing him to avoid it. "I can't run away, Chen Hao." Kaiwan sneered, Yi's limbs and arms suddenly stretched, trying to lock Chen Hao's retreat. But Chen Hao's brain moved quickly and noticed a lost mechanical crane beside him. The control panel of the crane still had a faint current. He quickly used the decoder to connect to the control system and activated the boom. The arm hit Kaiwan violently, forcing him to take a few steps back. Chen Hao took advantage of the opportunity to rush towards the back of the warehouse and ran to throw out the last electromagnetic bullet. The explosion of the impact wave made the chasers lose control for a short time. He slammed into the night without looking back, his heart beats like a drum, but a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Kaiwan, I've remembered this note," he gasped and said in a low voice. Although he successfully broke out, his gun energy was almost exhausted and his body was damaged more often. But none of these matters. Linzai's memory data has been obtained, and his whereabouts have also been traced. He knew that Xingqian Technology's trance was deeper than he thought, and the deep area of the Earth would be his next battle. The communications rose again. Yueying's voice was filled with exhaustion. "Brother Hao, are you still alive? That's great. I have positioned the entrance to the deep-level area, but the protection procedures in that place are not a joke. Moreover, the company's pursuit order has been spread in the underground market, and your money has reached a credit point." 1 million? Chen Hao snorted coldly. "They really look down on me." "Don't joke, Brother Hao. What should I do next? Facing the core of the Enterprise is not a joke. Yueying is rarely serious." Chen Hao was silent for a moment, looking at the skyline of the neon city far away, and the starry technology tags on the high floor shone in the night, like a giant beast looking down at the sentient beings. He clenched his fists, his voice low and firm. "No matter how dangerous it is, I will go deep into the ground and rescue Xiao Xiao. Xingqian technology, since you dare to move my sister, let's play to the end." The night wind blows, bringing a bloody breath. Chen Hao knew that this battle had just begun. His decoders were slightly hot, as if responding to his determination. And in that land made of data and soul, the shadow of my sister is waiting for him. The rain in neon cities has never stopped. The dense rain fell from the sky like a stream of data, hitting the old streets of the old city, and a thin layer of water mist appeared. Chen Hao hid in a deserted net bar, the broken display screen and scattered keyboards filled the corners, and the air was filled with a musty smell. He leaned against a chair with his legs broken, and the decoder port on the back was still stinging when he just fell into the ground. His brain was full of the deep-level area mentioned by Yueying and the file Xiao that the agent was called. "Brother Hao, are you really going to gun the data center of Star Technology?" In the communication device, Yueying's voice was filled with anxiety, and the green head was flashing on the screen. "That place is not a broken alley in the old city. Their security system can burn your brain into a pile of waste data. And the guy Kaiwan is carrying a team of thugs and searching for you everywhere." Chen Hao lowered his head and checked the guns around his waist, with less than 1/3 of the energy bar remaining. He took out a few self-made electromagnetic bullets from his backpack and put them on the table with his hands. His voice was low. "If you don't enter the tiger's den, how can you get a tiger's son? The deep-seated entrance is in the core data center of Star Technology. Only by entering can I find my whereabouts, and their verification. Yueying, you have to help me this time." Yueying was silent for a few seconds, then she sighed and felt helpless in her language. "Okay, who would make me the best tool for you? I will hack into their outer firewall from afar and open a way for you. But I can't help you with the physical security and core AI protection system. Brother Hao, are you sure you want to win this game? I don't have to choose." Chen Hao stood up, put on a ragged sweater, and pulled his hood down to cover half of his face. A decisive light burned in his eyes. "It's there, I can't wait any longer. Star Technology's spirit chain plan, no matter how dirty it is, I will dig it out. Okay, then we'll have a lot of money." Yueying's voice was filled with excitement. "I've locked the entrance to the logistics channel of the data center. At 11 o'clock in the evening, there will be a 3-minute window for the guard shift there. If you dive in there, I will interfere with their monitoring system, so that you can move at least 10 minutes. Brother Hao, remember, when the 10 minutes arrive, you have to withdraw whether you succeed or not, otherwise the rapid reaction team of the Enterprise will wrap you up. 10 minutes, it's over." Chen Hao clicked his head, turned off the communication device, plugged the gun and plug into the pockets on the inner side of his clothes, and then slipped out from the back of the net bar. The rain dampened his clothes, and the cold touch made his head clearer. He knew that this trip might be a life-and-death, but as long as there was a hope, he would not give up. The data center of Star Technology is located in the core area of Neon City. It is surrounded by a high-sounding glass curtain wall building. There is no light flowing on the surface of the building, like a sleeping data giant. Chen Hao traveled all the way from the old city area, avoiding several waves of unmanned Enterprise scans, and finally arrived at the entrance of the logistics passage at 10 p.m. This is a narrow tunnel hidden on the side of the building. The electronic locks at the entrance are flashing with faint red light, and the head of the monitoring image next to it slowly turns. "Yueying, are you ready?" Chen Hao sniffed a low voice, hid behind a container next to the alley, and his low voice came from the communication device. "The monitoring system has interfered, and I'm cracking the electronic lock. Okay, it's on." Yueying's voice was filled with pride. "Brother Hao, the guard shift has just begun, you have 3 minutes to go in. Remember, there are patrol machines and laser sensor networks inside, don't touch anything." Chen Hao didn't reply, and quickly rushed to the entrance. The electronic lock unfolded with a drip sound. He pushed the door in, and came towards him a dim corridor, with the smell of mechanical oil and current burnt. He looked down at the map shared by Yueying. The structure of the data center was like a huge hive, and the core server was at its deepest point, guarding the most severely. He must pass through 3 layers of security to reach his goal. The red external sensor in the corridor was shining with glimmer. Chen Hao took out a self-made interferer from his pocket and threw it under the sensor network. The equipment emitted a low-frequency wave, and the red external wire was short and lost its power. He took the opportunity to pass through and then quickly hid behind a pipe. The buzzing sound of the unmanned machine was transmitted from afar. He held his breath, connected to the decoder, and released a wave of fake signals, attracting the attention of the unmanned machine. The first level passes. He spoke in a low voice and continued to walk along the map. As we go deeper, the atmosphere in the center of the data becomes increasingly stressful, and the walls around us are filled with data lines and cold pipes, like blood vessels of living creatures, constantly emitting low sounds. The second layer is more tightly secure. The patrol mechanical guards were equipped with thermal imaging scans. Chen Hao had to walk around and crawl through a deserted repair passage, with oil and dust on his body. "Brother Hao, where are you?" Yuang's voice came from the communication device, carrying a tight flash. "The Enterprise's firewall has begun to counterattack. I don't have much time to maintain it. I'll give you 7 minutes at most. It's coming soon." Chen Hao gritted his teeth and climbed out of the repair channel. In front of him was a huge alloy door. The electronic screen on the door showed core area, only authorized personnel. This is the 3rd level and the last level. He knew that he would not go back when he went in. "Yuang, open the door," he said in a low voice, taking out the gun and preparing for emergencies. "It's cracking." "Okay, it's open." "Be careful, there's..." Yuang didn't finish her words. The alloy door opened slowly, and a dazzling blue light shot out from the door, followed by a heavy sound of footsteps. Chen Hao's pupils shrank, and he quickly hid from the door. He saw a tall figure walking out of the door, and the vibrating knife on Yi's limbs and arms flashed with cold light. "Chen Hao, it's you." Kaiwen's voice was cold, and the scars on his face looked terrible under the blue light. "I thought you would be smart and hiding in the garbage dump in the old city. I didn't expect that you would really dare to die. Send to death? How do you know if you don't try?" Chen Hao sneered, held the gun tightly, and quickly connected the decoder to scan the implanted equipment on Kaiwen's body. He knew that Kevin's limbs and eyes were both advanced goods, with built-in data interfaces. If the decoder could be used to interfere with the other party's system, it might be possible to compete for a first-line operator. "Looking for death?" Kaiwen roared, and voluntarily fell down. The sword wind brought a stream of air and directly shattered a pipe beside Chen Hao. Chen Hao turned over to avoid it, and the gun shot out an electric arc, but Kaiwen's outer shell actually had an anti-electric layer, and the electric arc only made him move slightly. "Do you dare to take this little trick to get it and see it?" Kaiwen snorted coldly. Yi's limbs and arms suddenly changed, and a sharp thorn stretched out, stabbing Chen Hao's chest. Chen Hao gritted his teeth, avoiding his side, and the sharp thorns rubbed his shoulders and drew a blood mark. He took advantage of the opportunity to throw out an electromagnetic bullet. The explosion of the impact wave made Yi's eyes short and lose his spirit, and the blue light flashed. "It's now!" Chen Hao was nervous, and he knew that he had to connect to the decoder with all his might, released a wave of high-frequency data impact, and directly hit Kaiwen's implanted device interface. He saw the data flow inside Kaiwen's limb system was instantly chaotic and his movements became slow. "Don't die, what are you fucking?" Kaiwen roared, swaying his sword and dancing, trying to force Chen Hao to retreat. But Chen Hao seized the opportunity, and the gun shot continuously. Kaiwen's elim connection in the arc finally made the other party kneel on his knees and roar in pain. "I won this game." Chen Hao gasped heavily and quickly urged into the alloy door, while using a decoder to lock the door and block Kaiwen at the same time. Inside the door is the core area of the data center. Rows of server towers stand like tombstones, and cold blue light flows in the air around it. He found the center console, connected the decoder to the interface, and began searching for the entry data of the ground deep layer. "Yuang, I'm coming in, help me stabilize the signal." Chen Hao said in a low voice. His mind was pulled into a data channel, and the scene in front of him changed, and he entered the digital soul-destroying ground again. This time, he dived directly into the deep area, and the data flow around him was like black sea water, heavy and suppressed, with countless pieces of consciousness slamming into it, and producing purified low words. "Xiao, where are you?" Chen Hao gritted his teeth, his cognitive touch opened, searching for his sister's traces. Suddenly, he discovered a familiar wave in a broken data area, swaying faintly like a heartbeat. When he walked over, a blurred shadow appeared in front of him, a girl's figure, her face overlapping with her sister in her memory. "It's almost." Chen Hao's heart was shocked, and he knew the test picture and touched the other party, but the shadow opened his mouth slowly, and the sound continued, "Brother, don't come, they used me, she's the soul chain, run." Experience? Chen Hao's pupils suddenly closed, and his anger almost burned his rationality. He saw the shadow surrounding the shadow with countless chains, shaking her mind tightly, and it was as unstoppable as a prisoner. He tried to use a decoder to crack the chain, but every time he touched, the shadow would whine in pain, making his heart feel like a knife. "Xingqian technology, you should die." Chen Hao gritted his teeth and slashed his mind, but the protection program in the deep area suddenly started, and a huge virtual figure emerged from the data stream. It was the core AI of the Enterprise, shaped like a giant beast composed of no number of lights, and the cold mechanical sound echoed in the brain. "If you are not authorized to visit, stop moving immediately, otherwise you will erase your mind." "Irashes? Try to see." Chen Hao roared, his consciousness condensed into a virtual long sword, and suddenly rushed towards the AI's data core. But the other party's protection mechanism was far beyond imagination, and no data touch came from all directions. Every attack seemed to hit Chen Hao's consciousness, almost breaking down. "Brother Hao, corporate AI has started, and I was also hit by the outside world." Yueying's voice came from the communication device, bringing a panic. "I will help you share some of the pressure. If you are tightening the download data, the core certificate is in the database behind the AI." "I understand." Chen Hao gritted his teeth, and knew that he had part of his cooperation with Yueying, and formed a temporary data barrier to resist the attack of AI. At the same time, his idea impeded to the database, and the decoder moved with all his might, finally breaking through the last layer of encryption, downloading the complete file of the Spirit Lock Link plan. The data records the entire process of how Star Technology uses ground-locking imprisonment consciousness, conducts control experiments, and even uses living people as experimental bodies, including their names and test records. Finished. Chen Hao felt nervous, but the AI's attack became more and more fierce, and the data barrier began to collapse. Yueying's voice rose again, gasping for breath. "Brother Hao, the data transmission has been completed, but I can't hold it anymore. The company's counter-tracking program has locked my position. I have to open the connection. You can withdraw quickly." "Yueying, thank you." Chen Hao growled, his consciousness quickly retreated, but the AI's data-touching hands snatched him tightly, trying to trap his consciousness in the deep ground. He tried his best to release the last wave of impact with the decoder, and finally tear open an escape passage, and his mind returned to reality. He suddenly opened his eyes, gasping for breath, and the decoder port on the back seemed to be burning. The data download was completed on the console screen, and he quickly unplugged the storage device and stuffed it into the inner bag of his clothes. "Do you die? Has this guy not given up yet?" Chen Hao gritted his teeth and looked around and found that there was a tight escape passage in the core area. He rushed over, pushed open the passageway, jumped into a narrow slide, and slid directly to the base of the building. Behind him, Kaiwan smashed the alloy door with his thug, and the shooting sound of the stepping gun reverberated in the passage, and Zifu wiped Chen Hao's clothes and flew over. Bang! Chen Hao fell heavily next to the garbage dump on the bottom, feeling sore, but he had no time to hesitate. He quickly got up, rushed out of the building, and disappeared into the night of the Neon City. The rain moistened his clothes again, and the cold touch made him clear. He knew that although this action successfully downloaded data, it also angered Xingqian Technology in a short time, and the subsequent pursuit would only be more fierce. As the communication device sounded, Yuang's voice was exhausted. "Brother Hao, are you still alive? That's great. I have prepared a copy of the data, and the soul-locking link plan will send the high-level star technology to the prison. If Neon City still has the right words. Shi Zhao's consciousness is still deep in the ground. I have to save her." Chen Hao's voice was low and his fists were clenched. "Yuang, help me analyze the data and find a way to crack the chain." "I understand. But Brother Hao, you have to find a safe place first. The company's money has increased to 2 million, and the whole city is full of soldiers who want to exchange money for you," Yuang reminded. Chen Hao snorted coldly, looking at the magazine of star technology far away. The light on the high floor was particularly dazzling in a rainy night. He whispered, 2 million? Come with them. Star technology, this game is not over yet. The night was dark, and Chen Hao's figure merged into the alleys of the old city, and the rain could not wash away the anger in his eyes. The shadow of the sky, the truth of the soul chain, the pursuit of the Enterprise, everything is like a huge net, trapping him tightly. But he knew that as long as the decoder was still there and as long as he had a breath, he would never stop. My sister is waiting for him, and Xingchen Technology's crime will eventually be revealed. The night in the Neon City has never been so heavy. The rain fell from the sky like no traffic, hitting the broken streets of the old city, and a layer of cold water fog appeared. Chen Hao hid in the top of a waste factory. The top of the broken iron leather roof was hit by the rain to create a heavy rhythm, and the smell of iron and oil was filled with the air. His clothes were soaked in the rain, and the decoders poured on the back were invisible to hurt. His brain was covered with shadows that were almost deep in the ground, the figure that was concealed by data chains, and the whisper continued, "Brother, don't come, run. Still, I won't give up." Chen Hao said in a low voice, his fists clenched so hard that his fingers turned white. He took out the storage equipment from his inner bag of clothes, which contained the complete file of the Spirit Link project downloaded from the Star Technology Data Center, a certificate of imprisonment by countless consciousness and uploading of living people, as well as a real-life record. This data is a bomb that can make Star Technology's high-level pay for the price, but it is not enough. He must return to the deep level of the Earth, destroy the core AI, and release all trapped souls, including his sister. The screen of the communication device flashed, Yuang's green light jumped out, and her language was filled with fatigue and difficulty concealing her excitement. "Brother Hao, I have analyzed the data. The control core of the Spirit Soul Clam is the top AI of Star Technology, the proxy Soul Clamator, which is directly embedded in the deep ground, responsible for monitoring and suppressing all prisoners. If you want to save Xiao Xiao and others, you must fuck it." "How to fuck?" Chen Hao's voice was low when his eyes stared at the screen with a sharp look. Yuang grinned and showed her 2 tiger teeth. "I dug out a loophole code from the data, which can shorten the soul carding man's protection system, but only in 3 minutes. Within 3 minutes, you have to use the decoder's extreme ability to break through its core, otherwise." She paused for a moment, her language became solemn. "Your consciousness may be trapped in the ground forever, turning into a pile of unintentional data flow. 3 minutes, it's over." Chen Hao pointed his head, without any hesitation in his eyes. He knew that this was the last battle. No matter how dangerous he was, he had no way out. "Also, Brother Hao, the pursuit order of the Enterprise is well known. Kaiwan brought a team of elite thugs to search for you. After earning money to 3 million credit points, the soldiers in the old city were all crazy." Yuang added, with a worry in his voice, "You have to find a safe place to sneak into the destruction, otherwise the body inside will be cut off, and no matter how strong your mind is, it will be useless." Chen Hao snorted coldly and looked around. This waste factory is the hiding spot he was looking for at the moment. The land was remote and covered with waste machinery and broken tanks, which is suitable for defense. He quickly set up several simple traps and made several low-level electromagnetic galvanized devices with waste irons and wires, which could barely delay time. "Yuang, help me monitor the surrounding signals. If Kaiwan approaches, notify me in advance." After Chen Hao finished speaking, he took out the last stool-type energy bar from his backpack, tear the packaging and took a bite. The sweet smell made him snail his eyebrows, but at least it could enhance his physical strength. He sat down against the wall, connected the decoder to the rear port, closed his eyes, and his mind was pulled into the ground composed of light and data, the digital soul-destroying ground. The deep-level scene of the ground is more stressful than ever before. The black data flows like an invisible purity, with countless pieces of consciousness pulsating in it, and produce purity of verbal words that make people's skin numb. Chen Hao calmed down his mind, opened his mind and quickly locked the data area where he had discovered the shadows before. He knew that the soul-locking one was nearby, and as long as you find it, you could do it forever. Brother Hao, I started the loophole code. When I counted back 3 minutes, it started. Yuang's voice burst into the brain. Later, Chen Hao felt the waves of the surrounding data flow, and an invisible crack spread out in the deep area, like an entrance to the ground. Without hesitation, his mind slammed into the cracks, and the scene in front of him changed, and he came into a virtual space composed of countless light lines. In the middle of the space, a huge number of giant zombies lie on it, shaped like a multi-headed dragon composed of light and code. Each touching hand circles an arc, emitting a suffocating sense of pressure. This is the soul-carding man, the core AI of star technology, and the true guardian of the Earth. Around it, countless minds were bounded by the chains of data, and they moaned in pain, and one of the shadows was just about to fall. If you are not authorized to visit, stop moving immediately. The sound of the soul-locking person was cold and mechanical, and he replied in Chen Hao's brain, otherwise, erase your mind. Irashes? Try to see. Chen Hao gritted his teeth, his mind condensed into a virtual long knife, the realization ability of the decoders. He knew that if he had no choice but to fight head-on, he had to take advantage of the window period of the vulnerability code and directly hit the core. He suddenly rushed towards the soul-locking person, and the long sword broke several touches, but more touches came from all directions, and each attack seemed to hit the mind repeatedly, causing him to almost collapse. Brother Hao, 2.5 minutes. The core of the soul-locking man is at its center and the data points are in, and you can move in. Yuang's voice was rapid, and she was breathing. It was obvious that she was also under great pressure in reality, trying to figure the loophole code. Chen Hao bit his teeth and knew that he could use the codec to fully operate the codec, and released a wave of high-frequency data impact, which briefly damaged some of the soul-locking master's touch. He took advantage of the opportunity to penetrate the inside of the giant beast, and the scene in front of him shocked his heart. Countless pieces of consciousness were compressed into a light spot, like stars in the prison, and a huge data point in the center flashed over the red light, which was the core of the soul locker. It's you! Chen Hao roared, and his virtual sword burst out with dazzling light, and suddenly rushed towards the data point. But the soul-locking reverse arrived instantly, and countless red lights pierced his mind like sharp blades, and the dramatic pain almost broke the connection. He knew that once it was opened, Xiao and other souls would be trapped forever and he could never give up. Brother Hao, there's still 1 minute. Fight! Yuang's voice was almost screaming. Chen Hao felt that the effect of the vulnerability code began to weaken, and the soul locker's protection system was being repaired quickly. He gritted his teeth and thought about distinguishing some structural temporary barriers to resist the light attack. At the same time, he pushed the decoder's capabilities to the extreme, and the long sword turned into a data torrent, hitting the data points hard. The virtual space drama shook violently, and a crack appeared on the data point. The soul-locking man roared angrily, and more touchers rushed over. Chen Hao's consciousness was almost suppressed to extreme limits, his smile flashed through his brain, and countless insomnia nights in these 3 years. He growled, "Star technology, your crimes end here." In the last 30 seconds, Chen Hao condensed all his consciousness into a blow, and the decoder's energy burst out with unprecedented light, and the virtual sword turned into a dazzling thunder, slashing the data points at the bottom. The shape of the soul-blocking person began to collapse, and countless streams scattered like a volcanic eruption, and the virtual space emitted a deafening bird. Warning! The core system collapsed. Warning! The sound of the soul locker continued and disappeared in full swing. The chains of data were broken, and countless conscious lights were liberated from the prison, turning into shadows, flying towards the upper area of the ground. Chen Hao found Xiao Zhao's shadow and touched her mind gently. This time, she did not moan in pain, but showed a faint smile. "Brother, thank you. Soon, I'm late." Chen Hao felt sad. His mind was filled with shadows, but she dissipated like a long light, blending into the ground's data stream. He knew that Xiao Zhao's consciousness had been free, and although he could not return to reality, at least, she was no longer tortured. "Brother Hao, the soul-blocking man is collapsing. The deep structure of the ground is disintegrating, you have to retreat." Yuang's voice burst into the sea of brain, bringing a sense of surprise. Chen Hao clicked his head, his mind quickly retreated, left the dead land, and returned to reality. He suddenly opened his eyes and gasped, and the decoder port on the back seemed to be about to burn, with cold sweat all over his head. But he didn't have time to rest, and quickly connected the decoder to an old-fashioned terminal, integrated the recorded Soul Cardon crash data and the Soul Cardon chain plan file, and prepared to upload it to the public network of Neon City. He knew that once this certificate was released, Star Technology would face unprecedented blows. "Yuang, help me connect to the anonymous channel in the underground market and spread the data out," Chen Hao said in a low voice, his fingers flying fast on the end. "I understand. Brother Hao." With this wave of operation, Xingqian Technology's high-level vomiting blood. Yuang's voice was filled with excitement, and then the data upload progress bar was displayed on the screen, which quickly climbed to 100%. Almost at the same time, anonymous channels in the underground market exploded, and countless hackers and rebels began to redirect data, and the truth about the spirit chain spreads across the internet like a virus. But the trouble comes with it. The heavy footsteps are transmitted outside the factory, followed by the sound of metal collision. Chen Hao's pupils shrank, quickly cut off the end, stood up, tightened his gun, and said in a low voice, "It's so fast." "Chen Hao, I know you are here." Kaiwen's voice came from outside the factory, cold and shady. "You think the soul-blocking person won? Xingqian Technology won't let you go, nor will I. Hand over the data, I will let you die happily." "Happy? Sorry, I don't plan to die yet." Chen Hao sneered, quickly moved to a high platform, overlooking the factory entrance. Kaiwen carried an elite thug with a team of elite thugs, well-equipped, and the blue light that was rushing to the slashing gun was flashing in the night, and the vibrating knife on Yi's limbs and arms emitted a cold light. Obviously, this is the last battle, and Kaiwen will not hold back. "Yuang, how much time is there?" Chen Hao pressed a low voice, and he connected to the decoder to scan the surrounding environment to find available terrain. The data has been disintegrated, the corporate crisis band team is collapsing, and the rebellion group of Neon City has begun to take action. You just need to hold on to Kaiwen, and in half an hour, reinforcements from the rebels will arrive. Yuang said hurriedly. "Half an hour? Then play a big game." Chen Hao sneered at the corner of his mouth and quickly activated the electromagnetic trap set in the factory. With a low sound, the waves spread out, and the eyes and mechanical limbs of several thugs instantly lost their spirits, and their movements became dull. But Kaiwen's reaction was extremely fast, and the outer shell of Yi's limbs developed into an anti-electric barrier, rushing through the vent waves, and the vibrating knife pointed directly at the platform where Chen Hao was hiding. Bang! Gao Tai was shattered by the sword. Chen Hao turned over and jumped down. The gun shot out an electric arc, but Kaiwen's limbs quickly adjusted, avoided the attack, and slashed his backhand at Chen Hao's shoulder. Chen Hao gritted his teeth, avoiding his side, and the blade rubbed his windbreaker over, bringing out a spark. "I can't run away!" Kaiwen roared. Yi's limbs and arms suddenly stretched, trying to lock Chen Hao's retreat. But Chen Hao's brain moved quickly and noticed a mechanical boom that was destroyed in the factory, and the control panel of the boom still had a faint current. He quickly used the decoder to connect to the system and activated the boom. The arm hit Kaiwen violently, forcing him to take a few steps back. Chen Hao took advantage of the opportunity to penetrate deep into the factory and ran to throw out the last few electromagnetic bullets. the explosion of the impact wave made the chasers lose control for a short time. But Kaiwen's speed was too fast, and the vibrating knife hit Chen Hao several times, forcing him to avoid it. "Do you think these little tricks can save you?" Kaiwen sneered, Yi's limbs and arms distorted, and a sharp thorn stretched out, stabbing Chen Hao's back. Chen Hao gritted his teeth and dodged, and the sharp thorns rubbed his shoulders and drew a blood mark. He glanced at a pile of waste irons in the corner of the factory, and his brain turned around and grabbed a sharp iron bar as a temporary weapon. Geo! The iron bar collided with the vibrating knife, sparking 4 times. Chen Hao's arm was numb, but he gritted his teeth and held it on, and at the same time activated the decoder, which released a wave of high-frequency data raids, directly hitting Kaiwen's Ely interface. Kaiwen's movements were slightly turned, and his eyes were flashed, and it was obvious that the system was disturbed. "Don't die, you are such a broken thing!" Kaiwen roared, swaying his sword and dancing, trying to force Chen Hao to retreat. But Chen Hao seized the opportunity, and the gun shot continuously. Kaiwen's elim connection in the arc finally made the other party kneel on his knees and roar in pain. "I won this game." Chen Hao gasped heavily and quickly retreated. At the same time, he smashed Kaiwen's Yi's arm with an iron bar, making a sound of crispness. The shackle of Yi's vibrating knife module was smashed and fell to the ground. "Chen Hao, you!" Kaiwen gritted his teeth, feeling unwilling to accept it in his voice, but his body could no longer move. Chen Hao looked at him coldly, the gun pressed against his chest, and said in a low voice, "Tell Xingqian Technology that this is just the beginning." Bang! The arc exploded, and Kaiwen fell to the ground, losing consciousness. Chen Hao gasped, wiped the blood from the bottom of the body, and turned around and looked at the night outside the factory. The sound of the car that was rebelling against the organization from afar. Yueying's voice came from the communication device. "Brother Hao, reinforcements have arrived. You fucked Kaiwen, and the data have also been released. Xingqian Technology is finally over this time." Chen Hao clicked his head and sat down against the wall, feeling sore, but his heart had a long-term calm. Although Zhao's consciousness cannot return to reality, she is free, and so are the imprisoned spirits. The truth about the spirit chain is revealed to everyone, and the high-level star technology will face a trial. Although the darkness of this city is far beyond this company, at least, he won this battle. The people who resisted the organization rushed into the factory. A headman wearing a mask walked up to Chen Hao and said in a low voice, "Chen Hao, your name has been passed on in Neon City. You are the endorsement of the legendary soul chain." Chen Hao smiled bitterly and said with a slight smile, "I'm not a legend, I'm just a brother who wants to save my sister." The leader was silent for a moment and patted his shoulder. "No matter what, this city owes you a favor. But be careful, although star technology has been created, they still have greater strength behind them. Today's victory is just the beginning." Chen Hao pointed at the high floor of star technology far away, and the magazine-shaped light looked dim in the night. He knew that the greater slander might be the one who was probably curling, but at least at this moment, he had completed the revenge and salvation. His smile flashed through his brain, and he said in a low voice, "Soon, brother did it. You can feel at ease." The rain stopped, and a glimmer of light appeared on the skyline of the Neon City, like a long-lasting hope. Chen Hao stood up and his clothes were playing in the night breeze. His figure blends into the crowd, but when everyone mentions his name, he brings a sense of awe. He is Chen Hao, the legend of Neon City, a man who tears the darkness with decoders and will. Although the road ahead is still long, at this moment, he can finally take a breath and calm his heart down. He was once a down-and-out private detective, betraying his sister's pain and storming his life in this city of sin. But now, he is no longer the confused Chen Hao. He has grown into a real fighter and learned how to find light in the darkness and how to protect the most important things with his own hands. He knew that no matter how much storm there was ahead, he would not retreat. The story of Neon City is still continuing. But this journey belonging to Chen Hao has already drawn up a perfect sentence.